Question number 8, Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change Issues and asks what reports, if any, has he received on the impact that uncertainty relating to the emissions trading scheme is creating for the forestry sector?
The Hon Dr Nick SMITH.
Mr Speaker, I have received no specific reports from officials of concern. Informal reports I have had from the forestry sector is that they have concerns over aspects of how the emissions trading scheme works for forestry and that there is difficulty in its application. I am also advised that there were mistakes made in the ETS legislation that was rushed through by the previous government in respect of forestry. Regardless of the Select Committee review, there will need to be an amending bill which inevitably creates some uncertainty.
Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. How does the Minister reconcile his statement that his and John Key's #1 priority for any climate change policy should be reversing deforestation, when his policies have stopped the planting of any new trees and caused the destruction of 7 million seedlings, as confirmed by David Rhodes of the Forest Owners Association and Peter Clark of PF Olsen yesterday?
The Hon Dr Nick SMITH.
Speaker, no matter how poorly this government might do on forestry, it will not be able to compete with the previous government that had the worst record of any post-war government, and I accept it is going to take some months for this government to restore confidence to the forestry sector. I would note, though, that in respect of the issues of seedling planting, some forestry companies have overpitched the value of carbon credits and understated the fact that there are large carbon liabilities when those forests are harvested. And as people have become more aware of those liabilities down the track, the investment interest has been more realistic.
Point of order, the Honourable.
Can we have assurance the senior government whip isn't coaching Mr Bennett in advance of him answering some questions later on today?
Order. That is not a point of order, and the Honourable Member knows it. Charles Chauvel, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what reports, if any, has he received from the major energy... what reports, if any, has the Minister received from the major energy and transport businesses that will become bound by the ETS on 1 January 2010 about the significant additional costs they are having to incur and the jobs now at risk in them as a result of having no idea whether they will still enter the ETS on that date?
The Honourable Dr Nick SMITH.
The reaction that I have had from both the transport sector and from the industrials is actually to welcome the Select Committee review. There is a broadly held view that the previous government rushed the emissions trading legislation, confirmed by the fact that officials have said that there are mistakes in that legislation that will need to be fixed by the new government.
Craig Foss.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister. What reports has the Minister received on overall planting rates, and how does this compare historically?
The Honourable Dr Nick SMITH.
The most up-to-date figures for forestry are for 2007, and that was the worst year for deforestation since records began in 1951. That year saw the loss of 39,000 hectares of forests, or 13 million trees. Frankly, I cannot understand the audacity of members opposite even be prepared to ask the questions given their appalling record.
Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. When are the Minister and his colleagues, despite already having drawn ministerial salaries for some 15% of the term of this Parliament already, going to take responsibility for their own inability to implement... No, sorry, sir.
Order. The member is perfectly entitled to have his question heard. Charles Chauvel.
My question to the Minister asks, when are he and his colleagues, despite having already drawn ministerial salaries for some 15% of the term of this Parliament, going to show that they can take responsibility for their own inability to implement coherent policy, as demonstrated by the chaos he has created in climate change and the answers from ministers to so many questions today?
The Honourable Dr Nick
Mr.
SMITH.
Speaker, the government announced a review through the Select Committee of the emissions trading scheme. Officials are working on a bill that is going to be required to fix a number of mistakes that the previous government made. We've also initiated with the Prime Minister's Summit, with Prime Minister Rudd, a sensible harmonisation of the New Zealand and Australian. Well, members opposite scoff. I actually think most New Zealanders would think it is perfectly sensible on a global issue like climate change and the close trans-Tasman relationship for our two countries to work closely together on climate change, and I'm surprised members opposite would take such an irresponsible view of that.
Question.